them overrun us. They have overrun us, you know.
You're lost, unless you can make them behave.
Dr. Logan, we are losing the cooperation of the men.
Tomorrow morning we're going inside that corral and we ain't coming out till every one of those rotten piles of garbage has been wasted.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Home Drive-In. George A Romero became the godfather of the modern zombie movie with his release of the 1968 horror classic Night of the Living Dead. Giving birth to a new subgenre, despite the novelty of walking flesh-eating corpses taking over the world, the film also reaffirms one thing: humanity sucks. 1978's Dawn of the Dead expanded George's idea with his zombie infestation reaching epidemic proportions, yet this time seeing mankind unite for the common good. No, I'm just kidding, we still suck. Yet with his third chapter, Day of the Dead, the world's gone to hell, the zombies have taken over, but the last remnants of humanity have finally managed to settle their differences. Who am I kidding? People are just awful. Before we dive into George Romero's third chapter of his epic Dead series, please note that I will be discussing the film in depth, so consider this your spoiler warning henceforth. Please keep in mind that I am going to be focusing largely on the makeup effects work that features in this film, so I'm not going to be holding back on gruesome imagery. Let's just see what YouTube lets me get away with. And if you do enjoy these videos, please show that like button some love and consider hitting those subscribe and notification buttons. But for now, let the show begin. Released in 1985, Day of the Dead is the third chapter in George A. Romero's Living Dead series, where hordes of reanimated, flesh-eating corpses now overrun the world. A small team of scientists and soldiers take shelter in an underground bunker where the eccentric Dr. Logan attempts to domesticate the creatures. However, they find themselves under the rule of the hot-tempered Captain Rhodes and his ruthless team, who have other ideas on dealing with the undead masses roaming the planet. Despite the popularity of his 1968 classic Night of the Living Dead and its sequel 1978's Dawn of the Dead, the demand for director George A. Romero to make a third film was relatively light. Yet having signed an agreement with United Film Distribution Company, its founder, Salah M. Hassanein, had stipulated that a new entry in his Dead series was to be produced. The three-picture deal began with the largely forgotten 1981 film Night Riders, about a Renaissance fair that jousts on motorcycles, and 1982's Stephen King anthology Creepshow. This gave George time to develop Day of the Dead, which was initially going to be a far more expansive epic that he would describe as Gone with the Wind with zombies. Many of his ideas for Day would surface in the 2005 sequel, Land of the Dead, as the original script featured survivors taking refuge inside a city, serving as a haven against the undead hordes. Due to a reduced budget, Romero focused instead on the tense character dynamics between the scientists and the military as they confined themselves underground. The role of the headstrong Dr. Sarah Bowman was offered to actress Laurie Cardille after Romero had seen her in a stage play. However, their introduction may have been given a little nudge. Laurie Cardille is the daughter of Bill Cardille, who featured in Night of the Living Dead and hosted his own late-night horror lineup known as Chiller Theatre, earning him the nickname Chilly Billy. Romero deliberately sought a strong female lead for the film, which, and I am paraphrasing here, was somewhat of an apology for his depiction of leading Lady Barbara in Night of the Living Dead. Terry Alexander plays John, the helicopter pilot whose philosophy on their situation becomes central to the theme of the story.
We don't believe in what you're doing, Sarah.
The Detroit-born actor put on the Jamaican accent for the film, and in later years had to repeat the accent when some people didn't believe it was actually him who played the role. Jarlath Conroy plays radio expert Billy, the somewhat comic relief who seems quite content to drink his way through the undead apocalypse. Sarah's boyfriend Miguel, an anxiety-ridden soldier, was portrayed by stage actor Tim DeLeo, also known as Anthony DeLeo, who apparently was so method he remained in character throughout production. John Amplis, who had worked with Romero before, playing the title role in his modern vampire tale Martin, and later performed as casting director for Dawn of the Dead. Amplis plays Fisher, who, along with his fellow scientists and soldiers, struggles to comprehend the methods adopted by their leading surgeon, the eccentric Dr. Logan. And since every horror film needs a mad scientist, Richard Liberty, who appeared in Romero's 1973 film The Crazies, plays Logan, affectionately nicknamed Dr. Frankenstein. Frankenstein attempts to, albeit fruitlessly, understand and domesticate the undead creatures, which nonetheless gives us the film's most sympathetic character.
Some nice things for you to play with.
Sherman Howard, credited in the film as Howard Sherman, features as Dr. Logan's undead protege Bub, who was only intended for a minor role, yet Romero loved Howard's performance so much that he wrote extra scenes for him. Howard's ability to emote underneath his heavy prosthetic makeup was attributed to his theatre experience, which one crew member would say was up there with Boris Karloff. Bub would emerge as one of the film's most memorable and popular characters, so much so that Howard shares this one memorable interaction with a fan.
And this rather attractive young woman came up to me and she said, "There's something I have to show you." She flips up her very short skirt, pulls down her panties, and there I was, my face, very good work, on her right cheek.
And while Bub may have been a hit with the ladies, he didn't prove too popular among the film's desperate collection of military personnel.
What the fuck is wrong with you people? They're dead!
Joe Pilato, whose brief role as a police officer in Dawn of the Dead was cut from the theatrical release, delivers a powerhouse performance as the ruthless Captain Rhodes. A respected theatre performer, Pilato pleaded with Romero not to let him go too over the top with his character, to which George responded, "It may be over the top, but it works." Gary Klar initially auditioned for the role of Rhodes, yet standing tall at 6'3", was given the role of the bullish Steele, which the actor would later declare was his favourite performance. The rest of the cast includes Ralph Marrero as Rickles, Philip G. Kelmans as Miller, and makeup effects artists Tasso Stravakis and Greg Nicotero appearing as Torres and Johnson respectively. Day of the Dead was initially offered a budget of $7 million on the stipulation that Romero deliver an R-rated cut of the film, which would no doubt have meant toning down the violence. However, as he had done with Dawn of the Dead, Romero insisted on his complete vision of the film with all guts and gore intact, upon which his budget was halved to $3.5 million. Day of the Dead was filmed primarily in a former underground limestone mine in Wampum, Pennsylvania, which would later become known as the Wampum Gateway Commerce Center. Exteriors, including the opening city scene, were filmed at Fort Myers and Sanibel Island, Florida. George Romero had earned a reputation as being incredibly calm and collaborative, forming a family-like dynamic as he often reused many of the same crew. As such, the production team was always willing to go the extra mile for their director, with many of them assuming multiple roles throughout the shoot. This had also been the case with Dawn of the Dead, which, being set inside a shopping centre, demanded a hectic nighttime schedule during the mall's closing hours. However, the production of Day of the Dead was met with issues of its own, since the cast and crew were confined to the limestone mine during the over 3-month shoot. The Wampum limestone mine was over 100 acres, acting as a storage facility for a range of things, including boating equipment, documents, and film stock. Today, the location is known as the Wampum Underground and offers third-party logistics, vehicle storage, and office space. This video isn't sponsored, but I hope they enjoy the free publicity. Often starting as early as 6 AM, the crew would film all day, then emerge from the mine at night time, which meant, as with Dawn of the Dead, the production team rarely saw the light of day. Aside from the isolation and claustrophobia, as production was wrapping up, some of the crew members were coughing up black dust after spending so much time underground. About 40 crew members became so ill toward the end of production, requiring a doctor that Joe Pilato said was handing out B12 like it was candy. With his films, Romero often threw his audience right in the middle of the action, and despite being a dream sequence, kicks off Day of the Dead with one heck of a jump scare. Yet when attempting to film the scene in which a dozen grisly arms reached through a brick wall to grab Laurie Cardille, the wall, thankfully only made of latex, fell on top of the poor actress. After re-securing it, the shot was finally achieved, yet since the actors playing zombies couldn't see Cardille, it was difficult to know exactly which part of her they were grabbing. As such, Laurie's husband actually plays the zombie that appears to grab close to her chest area, protecting his missus from unintentionally being touched inappropriately. Yet when Sarah finally awakens, the true beginning of the film settles in as our protagonists approach an abandoned city in search of survivors. An entire section of Fort Myers, Florida was closed off to film the opening moments, in which art director Cletus Anderson had dressed to look appropriately apocalyptic. When the characters' fears are confirmed and they find yet another city overrun by the undead, the scene includes a couple of shots of an alligator because this is Florida after all. However, the scaly extra was involved in a mishap on location after the Wranglers accidentally dropped him while being unloaded from the back of a truck. Soon after, a massive yell was heard when the revenge-driven reptile used its tail to catapult one of its keepers right off his feet. Nonetheless, the toothy terror did settle down and got its 15 seconds of fame, as did the Wranglers, who are in fact the ones playing zombies in this shot, just to remain close to their grumpy gator. It's no surprise that the true stars of Day of the Dead may well be the impressive makeup effects by Tom Savini, who worked diligently to bring George's zombie mayhem to the screen. And while his effects for Dawn of the Dead did put him on the map, the young artist would admit that his makeup work had come a long way since, declaring his work on Day as some of his best. Savini assembled a team that included future Walking Dead effects guru and director Greg Nicotero to create the numerous gruesome zombies and the bloody mayhem they cause. Setting up shop in his basement, Savini and his crew spent a lengthy pre-production schedule, creating numerous latex appliances that could later be applied to zombie actors. On any given day, up to 375 extras would be called in to be made up as zombies, which were divided into 3 tiers depending on their proximity to camera. Featured zombies would spend hours in Savini's makeup chair to undergo an elaborate transformation so they could be the ones to appear close up on camera. Mid-tier zombies were often handballed to costume designer Barbara Anderson, who would make up less detailed but no less gruesome zombies to feature in the mid-ground. For background zombies, special masks were made to be quickly placed over the actors' faces, negating the need for them to spend hours in the makeup room. Never intended to be seen close up on camera, these masks weren't too convincing, yet sadly seemed to be the only effects on set during visits by the press. Which, as this image may suggest, didn't put Romero in the best of moods, since he felt it wasn't a true reflection of the quality of the film they were making. 2 of the featured zombies were played by Deborah Gordon and Mark Tierno, who would admit that the process of having makeup applied was a long and uncomfortable one. However, getting it off again was borderline agony.
Yeah, this photograph's green.
Is this the only way to do it?
The glue used was incredibly adhesive, and while an assistant was sometimes available to help extras remove it gradually, on other days they were left to fend for themselves. In the early days of filming, however, some of the extras didn't bother hanging around to remove their makeup, and yes, decided to drive home fully zombified. Yet after a couple of incidents involving the scaring witless of a couple of toll booth operators, a rule was quickly implemented that the makeup must be removed before leaving for the day. Discomfort aside, that wasn't to say the extras weren't appropriately compensated for their troubles. The going rate for playing a zombie in Day of the Dead was a cap stating, "I was a zombie in Day of the Dead," a copy of the newspaper scene in the opening of the film signed by George Romero, and the princely sum of $1.
And all the fresh meat they can eat. Yes, that's right.
Truth be told, there was never any issue casting zombies, as the popularity of Romero's previous films had people all over the country jumping at the chance to play one free of charge. Savini's effects weren't limited to creating zombies, since his team was also responsible for the many shootings, choppings, beheadings and devourings that Day of the Dead has to offer. Savini had been a war photographer in Vietnam and had been exposed to some very real horrors, yet said the camera created a separation between himself and the subject. Thinking of the situation as a visual effect helped Savini cope with what he'd witnessed, yet admits he did use his experiences to help add authenticity to his work. So when it came to creating a gruesome death scene or dismemberment, Savini's philosophy was to always use the real actor when possible, since they can react to whatever grisly fate they happen to meet. One such example occurs when Tim DeLeo's character Miguel is bitten by a zombie, forcing Sarah to perform a quick amputation to prevent him from becoming one himself.
Both rolling?
Both rolling. Both have speed.
The scene combines a couple of clever techniques. First, with DeLeo lying with his real arm buried under the ground, with a fake arm attached that actress Laurie Cardille would cut into. In a later shot where Sarah presses down on the machete, this is now the actor's real arm that can freely move about, while the machete is now a prop with a hole cut out. The moment concludes when the shot reverts to the fake arm being completely severed, and while latex props and gallons of fake blood made up much of the film's effects, Tom Savini's insistence on realism had his crew going the extra mile for authenticity. Greg Nicotero was tasked with calling local butchers trying to source real animal intestines and other organs to be used for the film's more visceral moments. And after finally sourcing pig intestines, the effects team had amassed a nice collection of animal entrails to be used over and over again that were safely stored inside a refrigerator. That is until the production halted over Christmas for a week or so when somebody accidentally unplugged it.
I mean, the stench was...
Oh my God, it's just...
We had gas mask on, we had putty up our nose, we had leather, English leather on our lips to smell.
The crew returned to what was described as the foulest stench imaginable, yet due to the tight schedule were forced to proceed with filming the effect sequences, including the final moments of Day of the Dead's main villain. When a pack of the undead ultimately corner the ill-fated Captain Rhodes, they proceed to play a game of tug-of-war with his torso. Joe Pilato spent hours chest deep inside a hole in the floor with a fake body attached to his upper torso, which the effects crew then proceeded to fill with the vile-smelling guts. When it came time to shoot the scene, the crew and zombie extras wore earplugs up their nose to avoid the stench, yet Pilato had to have his face on camera and was afforded no such luxury. Adding insult to injury, since he had to be screaming throughout the shot, the actor had no choice but to inhale deeply, which Pilato declared absolutely crushed him. And despite the shot thankfully being achieved in one take, it seems the ordeal had a lasting effect on the unfortunate actor.
To this day, I can still smell it.
Nonetheless, his alter ego Rhodes still insisted on getting the final word in. When the ill-fated captain and his team ultimately fall victim to the ravenous undead, the underground facility they once called home became an all-you-can-eat buffet. But since cannibalism is a big no-no in the film industry, zombie extras were in fact munching on anything ranging from turkey, chicken, ham, and hot dogs. Despite their dedication to their work, Tom Savini and Greg Nicotero allegedly found time to play pranks on set, taking every opportunity to have a little fun at someone else's expense. Yet Nicotero didn't limit his practical jokes to the workplace. In the film, he also plays a soldier who dies, after which his severed head is reanimated by Dr. Logan, which required the construction of a realistic animatronic replica of Nicotero's head. Taking the prop home one day, he placed it on his bed and then called out for his mother, who innocently strolled in, prompting a response that probably should have been expected.
Ah! She screamed, she's like, and then she looked, she shook her head. She said, Thanksgiving Day. She wouldn't even speak to me the rest of the day.
Romero wrote his original Dead trilogy to reflect the cultural tensions of their respective time periods, and Day of the Dead was certainly no exception. Night of the Living Dead was crafted to reflect growing fears resulting from the onset of the Vietnam War, as well as tensions over civil rights and race relations. And while heavy on the gore, Dawn of the Dead had the unusual position of being the light-hearted middle chapter of the trilogy, with its commentary focused on the growing trend of consumer culture.
What are they doing? Why do they come here?
Some kind of instinct, memory, what they used to do. This was an important place in their lives.
However, Day of the Dead is perhaps the most philosophical, with its exploration of finding purpose and maintaining control in a world that has, for all intents and purposes, gone. The scientists struggle to find a solution to their predicament, while the military fruitlessly, yet ruthlessly, still tries to maintain control. Ultimately, as depicted in Night and Dawn, Day's zombie menace often pales against the fragility, instability, and dangerous nature of the human condition. John Harrison had been a long-time collaborator with George Romero, working as assistant director and score in Creepshow, and assumed both roles again for Day of the Dead. He was also the screwdriver zombie in Dawn of the Dead, jack of all trades that he is. Unlike Creepshow's more traditional approach to a horror film score, Harrison took the music for Day of the Dead in a unique direction, more akin to an action film, and laced it with a distinct Caribbean flavour. Since Harrison was on set throughout the shoot, it allowed him and George to discuss the appropriate mood for each scene, which he would later interpret with music. Using a Prophet 5 synthesizer and some guitar work, Day's score produced a variety of different moods, ranging from panic, despair, and with an astonishing regularity, optimism. When the film was eventually released, the response to Harrison's score was polarizing, with some critics apparently hating it. And for me personally, I don't get the hate, as this is easily one of the greatest and most surprising scores written for a horror film, period. Harrison's themes for Day of the Dead deliver an infectious energy that perfectly suits the film's dark and dirty depiction of chaos, desperation, and at times, hope. The soundtrack for Day of the Dead was originally released by Saturn Records in 1985 with 6 tracks, with the bulk of the music allocated to a single 20-minute piece known as the Dead Suite. In 2002, Numenorian Music and Taurus Entertainment Company released the album on CD with the same track listing, an additional song with some rather gimmicky extra sound effects thrown in as a bonus. In 2013, however, we were blessed with a complete score from La La Land Records with 28 tracks, plus the original soundtrack album on a bonus disc. John Harrison rediscovered the original master tapes for his score and helped arrange a new pressing on vinyl with Waxwork Records. The result was a definitive 37-track presentation that is a must-own for fans of this sublime score.
When the dead rose from their graves,
We've been punished by the Creator.
a plague that could not be stopped.
Day of the Dead premiered on June 30th, 1985 and was provided a fairly limited release, only making $5.8 million in the US, drawing in most of its returns internationally, totaling $34 million worldwide. However, critics who'd lauded Romero's first 2 Dead films weren't too impressed with his third entry, with the consensus being that it was overacted and excessively talky. Roger Ebert thought it lacked the thrills and satire of Romero's earlier films, praising the improved effects but panned the film for lacking characters that audiences could get behind. Variety labelled it an unimpressive third chapter, criticising the acting, especially what they declared an unintentionally risible performance from Tim Dileo. Come on guys, are we going to pretend the first 2 films had Oscar-worthy performances?
He grabbed me!
I'm gonna try.
Part of the film's theatrical disappointment may also align with a competing movie that actress Laurie Cardille tells a funny story about.
In fact, some of my distant relatives went to see it, Return of the Living Dead, and said, "Laurie, you weren't in that movie." I said, "No, that's not the movie." There was a lot of confusion around that.
As the Rotten Tomatoes score will reflect, the film has been reappraised over the years, with many fans and the late Romero himself citing Day as their personal favourite of the series. It would take 20 years for the Dead series to be resurrected, pun intended, with 2005's Land of the Dead, which adheres closer to Romero's original vision for Day and was generally well received. The series then took a decline with the 2007 fifth installment, Diary of the Dead, which blended the found footage formula with the onset of the zombie apocalypse. In 2009, the 6th and final film in Romero's Dead series, Survival of the Dead, was released to mixed reviews from critics, labelled as tepid and lacking new ideas. In 2008, a remake starring Mina Savari, also titled Day of the Dead, was released direct-to-video. There's your first red flag, and was universally panned by fans and critics. Another remake, Day of the Dead Bloodline, was released in 2017 to much the same reception. A TV series also aired on Sci-Fi in late 2021 about a group of survivors at the beginning of the zombie invasion, and was once again largely met with mixed to negative reviews. It's funny how this one property has mimicked the life of a zombie. It dies, gets up again, and does a little worse each time. Nonetheless, the original Day of the Dead has been shown a lot of love over the years with numerous pop culture references. In Season 4, Episode 15 of the AMC drama The Walking Dead, the character of Bub can be seen within a group of walkers who, nonetheless, was not played by Sherman Howard. In the Netflix series Stranger Things, the kids watch Day of the Dead in the first episode of Season 3, while part of John Harrison's score is used in Episode 6, during a tender moment between Robert and Steve. However, since Season 3 is largely set inside a shopping mall, one could make the argument that the whole season is also a loving tribute to Dawn of the Dead. While Day of the Dead was initially met with a lukewarm reception, the legions of fans who have come to love the film didn't go unnoticed by the film's cast and crew.
I really appreciate the fans, because without them loving this film, we don't work, we don't have a job. Thank you for appreciating what we did.
In the US, Day of the Dead was released on Blu-ray in 2007 by Anchor Bay and again by Shout Factory in 2013. Shout Factory's release contains one of the best feature-length documentaries I've seen, and heaps of behind-the-scenes footage, largely focused on Tom Savini's makeup effects. It also includes two commentaries, one with George Romero, Tom Savini, production designer Cletus Anderson and Laurie Cardille, and the other with Pulp Fiction co-writer and Day of the Dead fan, Roger Avary. It also contains a couple of interesting segments focused on the Gateway Commerce Centre, situated in the limestone mine where the movie was filmed. And while this release is indeed blessed with some terrific extras, as far as a definitive version, I'm proud to say that down here in Oz, we may just have given Shout Factory a run for their money. Umbrella Entertainment's 2-disc Ultimate Edition appears to combine Shout Factory and Anchor Bay's features, yet swaps the Roger Avary commentary with one featuring Greg Nicotero and other effects artists. The second DVD has additional features, including the 2003 documentary The Many Days of Day of the Dead and a nearly hour-long interview with actor Joe Pilato. Either way, you're pretty well set whichever version you choose, but if you've got the cash, buy both and call yourself a true fan. For horror fans, there's so much to love in Day of the Dead, and considering it contains one of my favourite horror villains and musical scores, I find it incredibly rewatchable. Nonetheless, I am spoiled by Dawn of the Dead's balls-to-the-wall mayhem, comic feel and epic scope, which remains, in my mind, the definitive and unequalled zombie film. Nonetheless, Day of the Dead didn't take long to grow on me, with arguably the stronger acting of the original trilogy, incredible makeup effects, and did I mention that score? Oh, that score. If you approach the film as a more intimate character study, Day of the Dead stands tall on its own. It's aged like a fine wine and should be resurrected on every horror fan's watch list. Thanks so much for watching this video, everyone. I'd love to know where you guys stand on Romero's Dead series, especially with the original trilogy, so leave me a comment and let me know if you're Team Night, Dawn, or Day. And while you're down there, don't forget to drop a like, and if you want to hit those subscribe and notification buttons, I promise to behave in the event of a zombie apocalypse. I can't promise I won't loot a liquor store though. I mean, what else are we gonna do? I will be back soon with a new video, but until then, be good to yourselves and each other, respect the living, dead and undead. I'll see you next time.